heard about shiny Pokemon before. They're awesome, incredibly rare, alternative colored Pokemon that grown men like me have kind of freaked out about over the years. We're gonna break down how to get shiny Pokemon in every single main series Pokemon game ever. So let's dive in. So even though shiny Pokemon were introduced until the second generation, it's actually possible to get shiny Pokemon in Generation 1. Kind of. See, in Generation 2, shinies were determined by what DVs the Pokemon had. DVs being the archaic version of IVs, and if your Pokemon's HP DVs were 0 or 8, the attack stat DVs were 2, 3, 6, 7, 10, 11, 14, and 15, and your defense special stats and speed DVs were all 10, then BAM! You had yourself a shiny. To make sure that you actually have all these stats, you'll need to get your Pokemon up to at least level 50, followed by inputting those stats into a DV calculator. If some of these Pokemon happen to be lower than 50, then you'll have to do like an item cloning glitch and get yourself a ton of rare candies. So moving on, in Generation 1, it's actually possible for certain Pokemon to have those exact stats, meaning that upon transferring a Pokemon from red, blue, or yellow to gold, silver, or crystal, you would actually have yourself a shiny. Now, I do say certain Pokemon, as the only Pokemon that can possibly have the exact combination of DVs needed are fishy encounters, in-game trades, gift Pokemon, game corner Pokemon, Pokemon obtained by glitches, and finally static encounters like Snorlax and the legendary Pokemon. And with all that said, that's how you can get shinies from the game that came first in Pokemon. And the chance of getting any of that are full odds, but hey, getting a shiny Pokemon like this is kind of like the ultimate bragging rights in my opinion. We're going to be looking at a lot of remakes. In our first set of Gen 1 remakes, there simply aren't any hunting methods. Just hope you get lucky and you have a 1 in 8,192 chance. Now for our second set of Kanto remakes, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, we have some major shiny hunting capabilities. This shiny hunting method combines several multipliers together, being lures, the shiny charm, and the primary shiny hunting method of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the catch combo. In LGPE, catching Pokemon of the same species many times in a row build up a combo. As the combo builds, so do your chance of encountering a shiny. With a max combo of 31, your odds go from 1 in 4096 to roughly 1 in 341 from just simply catching. Then once you go through both the shiny charm and a lure into the mix, you get slightly better odds at 1 in 273, making this one of the best ways to get shiny Pokemon in the series. What's very interesting is Anubis, a researcher, said that they looked into Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee's chain combo mechanism, and it turns out that the catch combo bonus only applies once to the next spawn of the chain species after one is captured. So a lot of people, myself included, had actually shiny hunted with this method incorrectly for many, many months. In fact, I think it was over a year. Now, we've already talked a little bit about Generation 2's role in getting a shiny from Generation 1, but now it's time for us to talk about what we can do to get shinies in those games. So as we talked about earlier, DVs are the determining factor of getting shiny Pokemon in this generation, which are still 1 in 8,192 odds for wild encounters. And obviously Gold and Silver was kind of the pinnacle of shiny Pokemon at least being introduced into the franchise, as that was when we first had the sprites of them, right? And this generation introduced things like breeding, and that's a huge impact on shiny Pokemon. So the DVs that a Pokemon gets when breeding are affected by the parent Pokemon, and this is a feature that I loved back in Gold, Silver, and Crystal in hindsight, and I kind of wish that they kept it in this game. Basically, the idea was at the time you could utilize Pokemon that were shiny to have a higher chance to pass down the shininess, because naturally they were passing down their DVs, and the DVs were ultimately what calculated that shiny chance. So if, for instance, you took the free shiny Gyarados you got at the Lake of Rage and breed it with a compatible Pokemon, there's actually a 1 in 64 chance that you get yourself a shiny. So it does like act hereditarily, which is really cool. You can even take a step further to increase your pool of Pokemon by utilizing the time machine. Here's what you do. You take the shiny Gyarados, you send it back in time to Gen 1. From there, you have it learn Mimic. Then you can encounter yourself a Ditto. You'll use Mimic to have the Gyarados learn Transform, and then you'll use the wild Ditto to transform not once, but twice, and then it essentially overwrites Ditto's DVs with the shiny Gyaradoses, meaning that when you transfer the Ditto over to Gen 2, it's gonna have the DVs needed for a shiny. So it's this whole crazy system where you could ultimately get yourself a shiny Ditto, essentially, and then shiny Ditto can pass on the shiny DVs onto its offspring, ultimately making it so you can hatch almost any shiny in Gold, Silver, and Crystal with a 1 in 64 chance. Gen 2 remakes drop in HeartGold, SoulSilver, and this is your choice is to breed with the Masuda method or use an exploit called the Cute Charm method. When it comes to the Masuda method, it's not bad, but it is technically worse than later iterations of the method, giving a 5 in 8,192 chance rather than the 6 in 8,192 that Gen 5 offers you. or ultimately the 6 in 4096 every other generation does after. Now the cute charm exploit is pretty intense and tough to explain, but it's very rewarding if you're patient enough to make it work. Through a little bit of manipulation to get the right trainer ID, secret ID, and through the use of cute charm, you can modify the personality values of encounters by forcing them to be the opposite gender needed. You could be looking at pretty much a 1 in 5 chance of getting a shiny. It's actually bonkers, and there's not really any other methods that are gonna top this. If you utilize the cute charm exploit correctly, it's just crazy shiny chances. Before we jump into Generation 3, I want to let you guys know that if you love shiny Pokemon as much as I do, you should definitely check out TeamShiny.com. At TeamShiny.com, we drop all your favorite shiny designs as sweet merch, and you can pick them up and deck out your closet today. Be sure to use code STELLAR to get 15% off if you pick up 3 shirts or more. Head over to TeamShiny.com and don't miss out on our awesome merch. Now diving into Generation 3, just like Fire Red Leaf Green for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, shinies are just full on, so we can just move forward here. When we look at their remakes, ORAS was instrumental in growing shiny hunting in the community. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire have a few amazing methods like Dex Nav, Horde Battles, and Chain Fishing. It's worth noting that in Gen 6, the base odds for shinies were cut in half, down to 1 in 4,096, making shiny Pokemon a decent challenge, but this is really what allowed shiny hunting to kind of make a mainstay in the Pokemon community. Then you combine that with Masuda method, and you ultimately have a 1 in 512 chance for a shiny. That's not too bad. Then there's the cool methods. Dexnav's a little complicated to explain, but essentially you search for a Pokemon, increase your search level, knock it out, increase your chain, repeat until you get a shiny. The odds can go pretty high when the Shiny Charm is added on, in some cases giving you roughly a 2% chance to encounter a shiny, which is pretty awesome. One of my claims to fame in the Pokemon community is that I was one of the first people to actually get a shiny with the Dex Nav when Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire dropped, and it was one of the things that really kickstarted my YouTube career, so I will always be thankful for Purple Wurmple. I even had this plushie made to commemorate the moment. Horde battles are another fun one. You don't actually increase your shiny chance, but because you're taking on a horde, you see 5 Pokemon at once, which just naturally increases your encounters and gets random shinies a lot faster. And then one of the most busted shiny hunting methods of all time, chain fishing. You stand in the same spot, continuously reel in water type Pokemon. If you have sticky hold or suction cups, you have a lower chance to break your chain. And after 20 successful catches, your odds of a shiny go to like 1 in 100. It's actually bonkers, and chain fishing ends up being one of the most effective ways to find shinies. In fact, I remember when Pokemon X and Y released and the internet was trying to figure out chain fishing, I found a shiny Relicanth in like 16 casts, and I'm like, oh my god, this is too easy. Arriving in Sinnoh and Generation 4, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum have a handful of shiny hunting methods that would transform shiny hunting in the franchise. The Poke Radar, the Cute Charm exploit that was in HeartGold, SoulSilver, and of course the introduction of Masuda method. Since we mentioned it a handful of times, we'll skip talking about Masuda method going forward. We're just gonna focus on the Poke Radar here. In short, once you get the Poke Radar from Professor Rowan, you'll want to carefully plan what Pokemon you want to choose to hunt, choose a nice patch of grass, and try your absolute best to maintain a chain all the way to 40. If you can do that, your odds of getting that elusive shiny patch of grass are about 1 in 200. There's some interesting nuances about getting shinies with the Poke Radar, but I'll save that for a totally different guide. I do have these types of guides on my channel, and I'll be sure to include them in the description below. For our most recent set of remakes, we've got the Poke Radar and the Grand Underground to talk about in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Poke Radar is basically the same, except the odds are twice as good now, and you get about a 1 in 99 chance of getting a shiny. And in the Grand Underground, you may have noticed Diglett just chilling about, digging themselves back into the earth if you got too close, leaving behind some collectible points. Well, once you get this to 40, for 4 minutes, you'll double your odds of encountering a shiny Pokemon. Just make sure to check every single Pokemon to make sure you don't miss out. It's too bad they didn't have shiny overworld sprites in the underground. In Generation 5, the Masuda method gets a slight increase, but there's no need to really go into that again. In Black and White 2, the introduction of the Shine Charm means 2 more shiny rolls. So combine that with the Masuda method and you got yourself a 1 in 1024 chance. Just keep in mind the Shine Charm is super hard to get in Pokemon Black and White 2, requiring the player to complete the National Dex, excluding mythical Pokemon. So unless you have all the Pokemon ready to be transferred, you might end up getting a shiny quicker than you would just gathering all the Pokemon necessary for the charm. Going to Generation 6, one of the most iconic generations of the franchise for me, that was really when, like I said, kind of got my start into content creation for Pokemon. They brought us some incredible methods, which we talked about with ORAS being horde battles, chain fishing, as well as Poke Radar making its return. So we'll give some focus to the Friend Safari. The Friend Safari gave you an insane shiny rate at about 1 in 586 chance of getting a shiny. And the thing that makes it so special is you get a ton of different Pokemon from it. Ditto, Eevee, middle stage Generation 1 and 6 starters, and so many other cool picks. In fact, I've gotten double shinies through this. I've gotten shiny race wins out of this. Friend Safari, one of the easiest and most fun shiny hunting methods. You legit just run around the grass and you find shinies, and it's just a good vibe. Alola! We are going to Generation 7. Alola brought a lot of interesting things to the series, but they also brought some really cool shiny hunting methods. In the original games, we were given the SOS method, which had Pokemon call an ally for help, with this being more likely when using an Adrenaline Orb during the battle. As is the case with a lot of these methods, you can ultimately create a chain through this. Once hitting 31 SOS encounters with the Shiny Charm, you're looking at a clean 1 in 274 chance of getting a shiny using SOS. But then Ultra Sun and Moon dropped, and they brought something even more special in Ultra Wormholes. These rips in space and time allowed trainers to travel light years away from Alola, encountering legendaries and Ultra Beasts along the way. Now, they all had increased shiny chances, but the Type 4 wormholes gave a huge 36% chance of getting a shiny Pokemon. A method that can actually beat the Q-Charm exploit with no crazy game manipulation involved at all. Moving into Generation 8 and Pokemon Sword and Shield, many were stumped by the shiny hunting in this game. It ended up being a bit of a battle method that resulted in the fact that by KOing certain Pokemon, you would essentially increase the chances of them having that yellow aura or brilliant aura around them. And if you would encounter those brilliant Pokemon, you would ultimately have a higher chance of getting a shiny Pokemon. Now, this information came out much after the game's release, so a lot of the shiny hunting that took place in Pokemon Sword and Shield was done with different methods, primarily Masuda method. But with the DLC, a new shiny hunting method became prominent with Dynamax Adventures. You'd fight your way through 4 Dynamax battles, being greeted at the end with a legendary Pokemon. And if you catch every Pokemon, then you ultimately have a 1 in 100 chance of getting a shiny with the Shiny Charm. The only real downside to this is you can only keep one of the Pokemon you catch in the end, so you better hope you don't get 2 shinies in one sitting. This ultimately resulted in my longest shiny hunt ever, going for a shiny Solgaleo. I don't even want to think about how long this thing took. Moving to Pokemon Legends Arceus, one of the most famous shiny hunting methods is the mass outbreak or massive mass outbreaks methods in the games. With the land of Asui being semi-open world, there's more Pokemon spawns than ever, leading to some easy shinies without really needing to try. However, both outbreak types gave so many extra rolls that it wasn't really uncommon to see players get multiple shinies in the same outbreak. And don't even get me started on the hype that came from getting a shiny alpha Pokemon, because that was just insane. And lastly, we have Generation 9, our newest release, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. As of writing this, Shiny Charm, Mass Outbreaks, and Shiny Sandwiches are the most viable options. Putting all 3 together gives you about a 1 in 512 chance of a shiny appearing. Or if you don't want to be limited to the Mass Outbreak selection, just the Shiny Sandwich and Charm will give you a respectable number, 1 in 683. Now, these numbers might not seem great compared to some of the other options on the list, but there's a lot of Pokemon that spawn on the map, and it's really easy to reset the spawns as well, so it doesn't take too long to get a shiny in Generation 9. As I said, I've got over 1,000 shiny Pokemon, and it's been a huge part of my life and my career over the last decade, so it's been really fun to take a trip down memory lane and recap all the different shiny hunting methods in the main series games of Pokemon. If you found this video fun, helpful, or anything in between, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. And if you like these types of videos, you should definitely check out this one right here, or you can check out this one as well, and don't forget to check out teamshiny.com for sweet merch. I'll see you soon.